Hello, this is Professor Kim Nelson with the Jewelry Design Department of the Fashion Institute of Technology, doing another tutorial in our series of tutorials for rhino modeling, modeling jewelry. This particular video is for JD237. The subject of the video is going to be modeling a floral brooch. The challenge with this particular project is that I have a very sophisticated brooch design. Lots going on here, and I'm going to model it using Rhino. Now, something like this would often you'd want to try and pull in like a soft surface sculpting program or something, but I'm going to take this as far as it can be taken using Rhino 3D. When you deal with really sophisticated geometry like this, generally your strategy is going to end up getting sophisticated to go along with it. I could try modeling this. In fact, I have done another video where I tried working this out, doing modeling in situ, modeling in location, using sophisticated 3D organic modeling. It ended up being too much of a challenge for some of these more complex petals. So what I'm going to do is combine two techniques here, at least two. I'll be using a flow approach combined with some very sophisticated or fairly sophisticated organic surface modeling. Okay. As always, especially with a model this complicated, I'm going to start with a maquette. I'm going to begin this maquette process by creating a rectangular surface that orients itself to each one of the petals and leaves of this flower. Brooch. I usually like to start from the back and work forward when I model. So I'm going to start with the leaves. First thing I need to do is get an orientation of this for the surface. So I'll draw a straight line that I think accurately reflects the directionality of that leaf. These are just lines both sides. This is a pretty advanced video, so I won't be talking a lot about commands that I think that by now you would be able to understand by seeing me do them. I'm going to try and center these up a little bit. Easy way to do that would be to record, to do a offset curve with history, both sides, through point. This allows me to try and capture the overall dimension of the leaf. Once I have that, I can adjust these a little bit to better reflect what I want. I think that captures that one. That was pretty good as it is. This can be moved over a little bit. I didn't really need to attach history to that. There we go. So now I have some basic shapes. I want to set a C-plane to go with this. I can try doing just a surface. An example of that approach would be doing something like this, but you'll see that I can't draw the surface at the angle I want because the C-planes aren't oriented properly. So I'm going to orient the C-plane. The best directional tool for orienting a seaplane is ellipse, as far as curve tools are concerned. So I'm going to go ahead and draw ellipses around the center line of these curves. I don't really care about the proportions of the ellipses. That does not matter so much. What matters is the directionality. So set a seaplane. Okay, so I have the seaplane in position. I can move the origin of the seaplane to anywhere I would like it. So let's say near snap would be useful for this. I could slide along that center line to what I think is about the center of that pedal, and that'll give me that new seaplane. Once I've done that, that ellipse is no longer necessary. I am going to save the seaplane. In case I want to use it later. I'm going to repeat that process for the rest of the leaves. Now that I have that, I should be able to surface. I'm not sure. The curves I know will work just fine with this. Let's verify the surface. Some commands in Rhino, okay, good. Some commands in Rhino cling desperately to the world seaplane, even if you set a custom seaplane. Fortunately, this isn't one of those. So I've created a surface, and I will now do a non-uniform scale. To pull that surface to roughly where I want it. I want to make sure that my drawing fits on the surface. And so I have that one. Setting the next seaplane. This one's surface is a little bit close to the size of the leaf, so I'm going to widen it slightly. And I don't want the back end to come in too far. It'll be useful to actually bring up the curves that I have drawn for this. And that works fine. I'm going to let this come down a little bit. Lost the end of the drawing here. It's fallen off the surface, so I need to move that that surface down. And I'm not catching the corner. You can see how it's fallen off. I can't have that either, so once again I will do a non-uniform scale. And widen that a little bit more. And the last leaf. And if I compare it to the shape, I can see that I'm going to need to widen that. In fact, I may want to change the orientation of that surface. Let's see. Definitely need to widen, not the drawing, the surface. So here's my drawing. I'm thinking it would be good to rotate this surface a little bit. To better capture that leaf form. And non-uniform scale it again. So its length and actually I have to stop. My non-uniform scale that I was using the current C-plane, but this no longer lines up to that C-plane. So reorient the C-plane to the now rotated surface. I'm going to need to save it. And update it. There. That gives me a new C-plane. And now I can use non-uniform scale. Remember, all of your transforms are C-plane dependent. I skewed, distorted that surface, and it's really important that it not be skewed or distorted for the process I'm following to model this. Okay, and now I can go back to top. So I now have my surfaces. For the leaves. And I can go ahead now and start to do some modeling here. I need to rebuild these so that I can actually sculpt them a little bit. I don't want to do anything really crazy with the sculpting on these, so I will probably go I like odd numbers, particularly going across this way, so I can have a center line. So I'll call that 7, and I'll call it going lengthwise 9, and hit OK. And that actually is going to work nice for that one as well, and this one. For this surface, it's a little bit of overkill, but okay, that's fine. So there are my surfaces. Now I have this at actual size. This finished brooch is going to come in at about 38 millimeters. So something that would be useful for me to decide right now would be what a good thickness for this overall piece would be. A quick way to sketch that would be to Once again, drag a surface corner to corner. That basically captures the size of our object. I don't have to be crazy accurate with it. Just something that gives me a sense of the overall shape and size of what we're dealing with. And then I can come into perspective and I can move that up or copy it up to get a sense of thickness. An even better way of doing it would be to do a solid extrusion. So and just to picture what I see the overall dimensionality of this piece being, and I think something like that would be useful. So I've got that. Going to go ahead and borrow the outline of the end of that. So that I have just kind of a front view elevation that I can work with. Might be nice having that going both directions. So that I can look at that from any angle. Group them together, put them on an easily visible layer. Okay, so I have that. So now I'm going to move my petal surfaces into position. And to do that, I mean my leaf surfaces, I need to know which one is the highest one. And it looks like this is the highest. I can see how this overlaps. This is the lowest. These two could be the same elevation, or these two, or these two. I think that actually I'm probably going to go with these two being the same elevation. I mean, I could make them slightly different, and I probably will. But for the purposes of maquetting or sketching this, I'm going to pull these up to about where I think they would go. And I'll move these together into their lower elevation. Now I don't want anything thinner than, say, 2 millimeters, so I can check what 2 millimeters looks like. And see, 2 millimeters was a lot higher than I had imagined it would be, which means I may have all of my elevations off slightly. Okay. Now this is why we do this process. So 2 millimeters for the middle. Bring this down enough that I get some good contrast and elevation. Move these two up to once again restore a little healthier increase in elevation. And that gives me kind of a deck of cards, as it were. I'm going to project the curves that go to these leaves onto the surfaces. I need to record history when I do this. Now already I can see that I have an issue here. Okay, So I need to go to the C-plane that relates to that surface and do my non-uniform scale. Back to top. And I don't trust that nothing bad happened with my projecting there, so I'm going to reproject it. With history. Okay. Same here. Same here. And same here. And this will give me the basics for shaping these leaf forms. I would also like to have a thickness to look at. The thickness for each one of these, I'm going to put it about 1.5 millimeters. So surface, offset surface, record history, minus 1.5. See, those are really thick forms for that leaf at 1.5 millimeters. So I'm going to take that down to 1 millimeter. I like that better. So now that I have that, I can start to sculpt. Now it would be nice to be able to see what I'm working on while I'm working, so I'm going to copy my background image over to one side. I'll hide this one for now. And that'll allow me to see what I'm trying to do. The form of this, I see this as starting low, rising up, and ending low at the tip. I have my locking things I don't want to grab accidentally. Grab my control points here. Make sure you don't ever have grid snap on when you're playing a gumball. Okay, and so I'm going to, and you'll see that the drawing updates, as does the thickness here. So I'll do this effect first. And you see that I actually kind of like the way that that flattens out. And maybe a little more elevation here. And this is really all I'm looking for. I don't want to put grooves down the middle or sculpt this surface at all. I just want to have a basic flow of how that's going to look, a basic sculptural effect. I'm going to take a look now at the highest one here. I don't really see much of it, to be honest, but since it's a high one, I once again would expect that it will also drop under. I want to see how these two surfaces are relating. Actually, I'm going to lower the back end of this a little bit more. Okay. And turn on the points here. Actually, I only want it on one. And same idea. I'm going to drop the point of this, reminding myself that I only see a little bit of it, so maybe only the 3 rows of the point. And this one I don't want to curl back up at the end. I don't want a reverse curl. I want it to just drop. It's a little sad right there. Now for this leaf, this leaf I would kind of like to have roll from the right to the left a little bit, and I would like it to curl up at the tip. So I'll do the roll to the right here first. So turn on the points, and I'm going to grab the 3 or 4 rows to the right here. Actually, I'd like it to drop further. So maybe I'll work in the opposite direction and deselect points from the center, moving out. Give me a little better feel for what I'm trying to achieve. Now, I'm using a gumball here. I don't need to use a gumball. I can also use a vertical C-plane and just use move. You may see a little glitchiness here and again when I'm working. That is not Rhino's fault. I'm running screen capture software that it takes a fair amount of resources from my computer. Sometimes doing a careful selection is not worth the time, so I'll just come back and reselect that end row. I oftentimes like not having the gumball active because it's easier for me to see what I'm doing. It is interesting that the top of this leaf is now lower than the bottom, but that may not stay that way. would like it to drop down. Maybe go up a little bit more. Then, like I said, have it reverse curve back up. Something like that. I think that's pretty nice. Yeah, that's fine. This row of points is a little low, but since that'll be under the petals of the flower, it really doesn't matter. I'll go ahead and lift it up a little bit. Okay, so I've got that. This is my last petal, and I actually want it to kind of fall off to the right and down. Ends up that I don't have it needed as nearly as low as I've got it here. I'm going to move it up. Same idea. I'll take all the rows to the side here. The selections can be the trickiest part. Now, when I see the top of the leaf break through the bottom of this leaf, I don't love that. Okay. Because this particular surface is so buried into other surfaces, it might have been helpful to and actually I think I want it to reverse curl back up. It's just going to be easier to select that row on its own. Yeah, something like that. After sculpting it, it's clear I can move that whole leaf up. Now it's important to note that these surfaces represent the top most or pretty much the highest elevation in the leaves. There may be some things that rise above it. I can decide that as I go. I would like the end to roll down a little bit, so bring my points back. Oops. Grab the wrong. And actually, I think that's good. So, I now have my leaf maquette surfaces. If I want to clean it up more at this point, I could by simply grabbing the outline curves of each one of these and trimming the surface away. You don't want to do it that way because they're trimming through each other. So, one at a time. And you'll see the offset surface underneath, because it has history attached, will tighten in to follow the shape of the leaf. This is useful if you just want to visualize it, but for the purpose of our modeling method, we really don't want them trimmed. We need to keep them as they are. So those are the maquette surfaces for the leaves. Now let's work for the petals. Okay. So, there. Our petal lines are right here. And it's the same idea. We need to come up with straight lines that pretty much give us the orientation that we want. So, same technique I used before, straight line. From the center. And offset. Just to help me visualize. The fit and location of these. This is about the most complicated petal here, because just of the getting the directionality for it is going to be difficult. It curves in space enough that it has several different ways you could look at it. This one's probably one of the easier ones. Just to make my life a little easier, I'm going to group the associated curves. And then look and see what I think. It's getting complicated enough to look at here that I'm going to use some selective layer use so I can see what I've got. I had the copy option on. something like that. That's good for that one. And once again, just trying to find a good average direction and width and size for these. Once again, this is the tricky one. See, that captures the whole thing. Almost. I'll have to widen it. And I do think that's a pretty good directionality for it. That looks pretty good. This is the final one here. I think this one needs a little adjusting. I think that's pretty good. Okay, so now the next step is going to be to put in those ellipses. And once again, it does not really matter the proportions of the ellipse when you're using it for this purpose. So, there we go. And the same process. And the centering of this I'm just doing by eye. That's fine. I just come along and pick the visual center of where I think that petal is at. So coming back to petal 1, surface tool, and then do my non-uniform scale. Width looks good. Length is a little long. I'm using ortho when I move this because I can. I got a C-plane set to exactly what I want. To make my life easier, I'll delete those red brackets as I go. Width on this could be a little bit wider. Actually, it could be quite a bit wider, as we will see here in a minute. And do the non-uniform scale again. This time grab the edge here, or the end, it doesn't matter. I need to make it a little bit wider so that it captures the full curve there. Since I've moved its center, I'm going to set the C-plane again. And then save it again. And moving on to pedal number 3. And this one needs some adjusting, so let it really widen up a bit, and then shorten it, and then move it so that it really captures the whole curve, and then reset the C-plane to it because I've moved its center around. I didn't do that with the leaves. I don't really have to do that here, but it's nice. And it just takes a second. Now see, that's interesting. I didn't have the C-plane set properly. There. So, that threw me for a minute. There we go. And once again, this is the curve I'm trying to match. So, non-uniform scale. Width looks good. Length is too long. Length is still too long. By the way, I could also just turn on the control points and move them. I'll do that on the next surface just to show you how that it's done. Okay, and one more. And the curve I'm trying to capture is this one. Width is a little narrow. I'm just going to turn on the points. And I can move them with ortho. Important to keep ortho because this has to be a nice clean rectangle. And then as long as I use ortho, it'll stay a nice rectangle. So So I can do that instead of non-uniform scale, should I wish to do so. Okay, I no longer need those. So there are my petal surfaces. Now, something I did not do with the leaves, which I should have done, and you should always do with your work, is before I sculpt these at all or play with them, I'm going to copy, paste, group, and take this grouped set of surfaces and throw them into storage, in case I need to come back and get them. The leaves I've already sculpted, so if I decided I don't like them, I can't get my originals back. This way I keep my originals. And now, I can bring back the surfaces that I made for the leaves. I can bring back my guides. Okay. Turn back on my reference. Highest petal is this one. I think these two are the highest. I think these two are in the middle. Well, actually, remember, this is my lowest leaf, so I don't want this to be my lowest petal. So, highest, middle. I'll have to change a little bit of relationship between them. And the lowest down here. Okay. So the highest are these two. The middle are these two. Oh, hang on. Nope. These two are the highest. These two are the middle. And this one is the lowest. Okay. I need to rebuild these surfaces. Just use the same that I used for the leaves. I think that worked out nicely. And I need to project my curves with history. I need to offset my surfaces. And I'll go with the same 1 millimeter. Actually, I think it needs to be a little thicker on the leaf, so too thick. Let's try 1.3. Yeah, that's good. Now that surface is flipped, so it's actually, I'll keep going around, see if I can find another one that's okay. Yeah, that's the same direction. This will be a minus 1.3 because of the direction of the arrows. Okay, So now I have those in position to be sculpted. I don't need my drawing curves anymore. Don't need my elevation. I'm going to go ahead and lock the offset surfaces and lock the drawings on top of the original surfaces. And now I will bring back my leaf surfaces, and I will bring back my leaf drawings so I can see them. I think I'll start with the middle leaves, middle petals. I definitely feel a falling away on this one to the right, low into the center, and low out on the end. Now, it's getting complicated enough that I might find it worthwhile, if I can find a colored layer I can use, to change the layer of the surface I'm currently working on, just so I don't have to compete with all the other layers. Actually, that I don't want the two outer ones to move. If I want a gradual and repeatable ramp, since Rhino remembers the last dimension I used in the move command, I can just keep repeating the move command and hit enter, and it'll give me that same slope, same distance. See, that gives me a predictable sort of roll off for that. I would like more of a roll off than that, so repeat the process. That. I often like to engage flat shading. Because it makes the steps more obvious. this is tricky because I have a lot of stepping going on in the sculpture, but I want to do that with the sculpture. I don't want to do that necessarily with the flow surface. So this is what this will eventually be, is a flow surface. So I think that that is enough. I might want to counter roll a little bit on the edge. It will hardly affect things. In fact, it's not worth doing. It has so little effect. Okay, and I did want to have it also fall downward. If I start to sense that I have a distorted surface, I'm going to go to the top view and look. And you see this? Right there. I did not maintain control of my points, moving them straight up and down. It's critical that those points move straight up and down, so that surface stays true. Okay. When you're doing any kind of control point modeling, it's very useful to keep moving your camera, panning around, zooming around, rotating, revolving, so you can see what you're getting from all different angles. Looks good. So that petal is done. Okay. It's important to look at how it's relating to the leaf underneath. I've got quite a drop. Oh, and I also wanted to have it drop down in the center here at the end. That's important. So now as I compare that to the leaf underneath it, I think I can move that whole petal down. Pretty easily, and keep the same sculptural effect. Okay, so there's one. Okay, this is one of the high ones. This one, down low, up, down low. Actually, I see this being low. So low, up, low, up, low. this one I might need more points. Right now I have 9 going this way. I think I'll increase that to 12. Just because this design has a lot going on. This petal. I'm going to lift one side of this up. Take this corner down. Okay. Drop that down a little bit. Gumball irritated me, so I'm going back to my regular pattern. Feel some real height coming in through here. And I need to drop the down. The end goes down deep. This corner. So I'll take the area I know that's going down deep and I'll move it down deep. And then I'll decide how I want that to actually play out. That's what I want. Double check that I kept everything true and square. I did. There's one point here that looks like it's sunk a little too low. Fine. Now, once again, if I compare that to the petal next to it, which is not the lowest petal, it's a medium petal, I have a tremendous amount of height here to play with. I'm going to move it down. pedal actually curls forward. And then it's a pretty straight and then drop. There's a considerable drop, rotating, dropping off to the inside there. I find my mouse having a hard time controlling those small. And see how that is skewed? I can't trust it. If you ever see your gumball skewed like that, it's now reading the surface instead of the orthographic projections. I can't work with that. I don't want to play with that right now. Don't want to adjust it or deal with it. So I'll stick with my, I'll just be more careful with my mouse. What's happening there. Accentuate it. Okay. So there's that. And once again, I am way up in the air compared to where I need to be. I'll stop at that point. So I have my two highest. Hit the other middle. Okay. This pedal banks low to the inside. Starts low and climbs. So there's the sweep up. Now the fall down on the inside is its own thing here. And I think I'll start it here. Caught in my selection. Now, I do have this is now the bottom of this is biting into that, which I don't necessarily love. Let's see how much impact it really has. I can approximate it by trimming this. Okay. After all is trimmed and done, it's not a problem. Okay. So, last petal is the lowest petal. The most complicated petals. This once again falls away pretty steeply. It falls away at the end and down the side. So. Something like that. Surprisingly, that gave me very much what I was looking for. these are actually going to interact. I'll do some preemptive trimming here. For some reason. Actually, I don't want to break the history, so I'll just select them and trim that way. Yeah, see, once I do that, I'm okay. For some reason that didn't update the bottom surface. I don't know how that happened. Might be because of the complicated trim. Yeah, it's just too complicated of a trim object. And Rhino's kicking back. More than one trim curve, it won't abide. Okay. Looking at this, I can lower this pedal some, and I can lower that pedal quite a bit. Okay. I like that now. Unfortunately, I didn't undo the trim on this one. I'm going to see what happens if I untrim. Good. Kept the history. Alright, so that's it. For this video, that gives me pretty much what I need. I may need to drop the tail end of some of these leaves down a little bit, but I can do that as I model. So that's it. The basic maquette flow surfaces. Actually, I need to untrim this one as well. Okay, that's it. Thanks so much for watching.